Today, we're talking about the growing corporate solar market with Engie Distributed Renewables. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Welcome to SolarWorks for Illinois. In recent years, Engie has been on an absolute buying spree, and they have a long and storied history in the infrastructure and energy space. In addition to being one of the largest solar developers in the world and the largest independent power producer, they are the same company that built the Suez Canal. My guest today is Kristen Fornes, Director of Business Development for Engie Distributed Renewables in Chicago. She focuses on helping large corporate customers achieve their renewable energy goals through rooftop, ground mount, and carport solar installations at their facilities. Engie Distributed Renewables, formerly SoCore Energy, is a longtime partner of ours here at Continental, so it's a great pleasure to have Engie on the show. Welcome to the show, Kristen Fornes.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
So great to have a developer partner of ours on the show. And we have done numerous projects together, Engie and Continental, or previously SoCore and Continental, namely the several IKEA projects and a bunch of Target stores last year and this year. So it's great to have you join us finally. So what's going on and how did you ever get into renewable energy anyway?
That's a great question, Tim. It was actually a total accident. It found me. So I was working for a retail supply company in Chicago that was acquired by AEP. So we went by the name AEP Retail. And SoCore Energy found me on LinkedIn and reached out, said they were looking for people with energy experience to join a solar company in Chicago, which was quite shocking to me. In 2012, I hadn't even seen a solar panel in Chicago, I don't think, at that point. So I was pretty surprised to hear that there was a big solar company in Chicago, and interviewed with the company and loved everything about it. It was a fun culture and seemed like they were doing some really exciting things. So I was really excited to join.
Yeah, SoCore was, only one of two native Chicago developers, as far as I know. Invenergy and SoCore were the two renewables companies in Chicago, really. And then Engie went on their buying spree and gobbled you guys up a couple years ago. How is that going?
It's been interesting. So we went from being somewhat of a startup. Still, we were owned by Edison International, which is a utility holding company out of Southern California. They own Southern California Edison. So we had some experience being owned by a larger company, but Engie is certainly orders of magnitude larger than that. So I'll say that we've had a really great experience so far being brought into the Engie family and now going by the brand name Engie Distributed Renewables. Engie is a fantastic company that is 100% focused and invested in renewable energy development. So it's been a really nice place to land. As you know, renewable energy is very risky. It takes a lot of capital to develop these projects. And it really helps to be owned by a company and have a parent that supports everything that we're doing and wants to double down and be a part of the clean energy revolution. So I think it's been a really fantastic place for us to land. And we're still based in Chicago, still have the fun environment or entrepreneurial spirit. So I would say overall it's just been really great.
So why don't we have you lay out the structure of Engie North America, because there are quite a few business groups in just North America. And then if you would just touch on the international piece. It's a French company, right? The headquarters?
Yes. So the headquarters is in Paris, France. And globally, Engie is about 60 billion euro of revenue each year. Globally, we're the largest independent power producer in the world. So we own about 115 gigawatts of generation globally. And as part of a strategy change, Engie was formerly known as GDF Suez. Suez, because they actually built the Suez Canal. So Engie's been around since the mid-1800s. So a couple years ago, about 5 years ago, they changed the strategy, wanted to divest from fossil fuels and get into renewables. So in North America, what that means is they acquired a number of companies and developers that were doing wind, solar, and storage. So SoCore was one of those acquisitions to focus on the distributed business. They acquired Green Charge Networks, which is now Engie Storage. They acquired Infinity Renewables. It's a utility scale developer out of Santa Barbara. They're now Engie Wind. And then Solaire Direct was an acquisition, and the global business unit for utility scale solar is called Engie Solar. So they brought together in North America basically this really great set of companies to build out their renewable platform in North America. So our goal is to build out 9 gigawatts of utility scale and distributed wind, solar, and storage projects in North America. So we've been busy over the past 2 years, and I think we're going to have a busy couple years coming up.
9 gigawatts over what period of time?
Before 2023.
Okay. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we're about 3 gigs in now, so we're making a nice dent, but we still have a ways to go. So hopefully, if you stay tuned in the news, you'll see some more really exciting announcements with big projects that we're working on with customers. So we're really excited.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for introducing me to Tom Green. We had a nice discussion a couple of weeks ago, and I think that we'll be following up on some work of his in the Midwest. So, we know you as a DG solar developer, and we're doing rooftop projects together, but you're also doing, or you have the utility solar group that's also doing utility solar here in the Midwest, and of course across the country. So we have lots to talk about. But Kristen, what are the signature projects in your portfolio that you can talk about? What are you excited about?
Sure. So I am really excited about the portfolio of projects that are finishing up construction this year in Illinois with Target. So those were all built for us by Continental. So you guys have done a fantastic job on the construction side. But I think it was just a really great example of where good policy can lead to really successful solar projects. So we started developing those projects with Target when the Future Energy Jobs Act was passed, and really built a nice portfolio of projects. We started developing early, worked on interconnection early, permitting early, designed our projects, and just really set the stage for a nice portfolio of projects. So I think you'll probably appreciate sometimes when these incentives are involved, it's a big rush to get your projects built, and everybody's really working overtime to try to meet these timelines that are very tight. So I think this is a great example of where we got ahead of a program. We knew it was coming. We were very involved in the stakeholder process, and we built out a really nice, successful portfolio with Continental. And all too often we're turning over projects to our construction partners at the 11th hour because that's what we have to do for incentive programs. But I think this was a great example of where that pre-planning really led to a successful build out. So I'm really proud about that portfolio. I think we did a nice job together.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I hear lots of comments around the office from project managers about all the developers that we work with. We get probably upwards of 80% of our work from solar developers. And this is no kidding, Engie is at the top of that list in terms of the quality of the plan sets that we receive, the quality of the interactions. It's just a very, you guys really have your act together. So thank you. And you can rest assured that you truly have arrived. There may not be a higher quality solar developer operating in North America. So stick to your guns and let's keep doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned FEJA. That's the Future Energy Jobs Act that got signed in 2016, took force in 2017. Then the RECs really came on. First contracts being signed in 2019, and it was kind of one and done though, right? Now that pulse of blocks 1 through 4 has moved through, and now everybody's putting projects into the queue for block 5 and waiting with bated breath because we don't know when block 5 is going to open. And we also don't know what the declination is going to be from block 4 to block 5. So it's hard to model the ROI. But talk a little bit about that transition, so to speak, right? You mentioned the target portfolio. That was a huge win for you guys. Many megawatts of rooftop solar now installed and making your dent. What is on your radar moving forward?
So I would say that Illinois is it's a heartbreaker of a market. We were so excited to be based in Chicago after 10 years, finally having a really great, strong market in our backyard, only to find that all of the next steps with this program are really pretty up in the air. And I would say that unfortunately, this is another example of why it's not a good strategy to be only focused on one market exclusively. So I think that with COVID, it's going to be pretty challenging to get more funds over to this program, or a significant amount of funds. But I'm definitely keeping my fingers crossed that we'll get some more funds and we'll have future iterations of this program. As you mentioned, there's a lot of customers and projects out there that are interested in future funds and future rounds of this program. So I think just the show of the demand of projects is really encouraging. What was it, 2 gigawatts of projects, community solar projects that were submitted in the first round of this program, and all the funds for customer-sited projects were subscribed almost immediately when the program opened. So I think it's a really great case for why this is a great market for renewables. Customers have an appetite for it. There's a lot of great developers in Illinois, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that that things work out and there's more funds available in future program rounds. It's a great market.
Yeah. We're of course beating the bushes for projects in Illinois, and happy to take on additional projects in Illinois and develop projects in Illinois, but we can't bank on that. So we have to start looking at neighboring states, and we're a Midwestern company, born and bred. We will be happily working in neighboring states across the Midwest, but probably not much further afield than that. Are there other places in the Midwest that are hot for you?
Yes, that's a really great question. So I thought it was interesting to see on a number of forecasts from various sources that Indiana is actually on the list of being one of the top markets for customer-sited projects over the next 5 years. I thought that was pretty interesting. From what I've seen, the tariffs are going to be tough to beat, but again, I think it's a market where you have a lot of large industrial users that are looking for alternatives and want to develop renewables. So I think that could be an interesting market. Ohio and Pennsylvania are very strong for the utility scale business. So we have a lot of projects in those states, and we're looking, see a lot of customer demand in those states for, for opportunities. Virginia is another fantastic utility scale market, and now hopefully, knock on wood, a good DG market. So we're pretty excited about Virginia potentially opening up with their recent 100% renewable energy goals and setting up some kind of a program. I have to say that the heartbreaker for me of those markets is probably Ohio. I'm from Ohio. I think that there's a tremendous amount of businesses that have large facilities in Ohio, and they want to try to do something on site, but it's just been so challenging because that market has such a low retail price for customers. So while customers might be paying 7 cents in neighboring Pennsylvania, they're paying 3.5 or 4 cents in Ohio. So it's really tough for customer-sited projects to pencil in Ohio. So we'll see what happens, but that's really my view of what's happening or where we're focused and what we're excited about in PJM.
Yeah, I think the C&I customer facility owners sometimes forget that the price of power really influences the ROI of solar, because that's basically what we're offsetting with solar power, right? And so the higher the price that a customer is paying for supply of energy, the higher the value of solar energy in return. And there is a threshold below which it's you can do it. It's just going to be a longer payback period. So that's why here in Illinois, the incentives are so important and so relevant. And, you know, with the SRECs that we had in blocks 1 through 4, and we'll again have, just a question of when, with block 5, you know, we're getting to a 4 to 6 year payback period. So, if not Ohio, you mentioned Indiana. You think there's a rooftop market in Indiana? Because I've been asking and struggling to find a clear signal. I see the large scale RFP happening, you know, with NIPSCO, some huge amount. I can't remember. Is it 2,800 megawatts or something, or 1,900? It was a very large RFP in 2019. But as far as DG goes, what's the Indiana landscape?
So Indiana it's kind of like Pennsylvania in a way, where the brown power tariffs are quite a bit higher than they are in Illinois and Ohio. So I don't think that a customer would need the kind of incentives that we have available in Illinois to make a project work. But I think it's still going to be a challenging business case for your typical CFO who is looking for a 4-year payback period. You're not going to find that. But I do think there's some tariffs that are a little bit higher, and perhaps there's customer interest from what we've seen that will lead to some projects. But it's just interesting to see that a lot of the third-party consultants are reporting that they think that Indiana will be a fairly large market, maybe like 300 megawatts of customer-sited projects over the next 3 years. So that's one that I'm speculative on, but we'll see what happens with it.
And I don't want to belabor this too much, but it sounds like you're then catching planes to even further flung places to pursue projects. What other states are you personally working in?
So right now, I would say we have about 10 or 12 states that have been really hot on our radar. And Engie develops projects in all 50 states. To date, I want to say we've we've developed projects in almost 30 states. So, we're not focused on a particular market per se. We're more focused where projects make financial sense and where there's good policy, and there's customer interest for projects. So to date, this year, the biggest market that we've seen interest in has definitely been New Jersey. So there's really a lot of activity happening in New Jersey with the end of their SREC program and their transitional program, and then the upcoming successor program. So we've seen a ton of interest for projects in New Jersey, and pretty excited about everything that we have coming up for 2021 construction in New Jersey.
Yeah, I've been learning about the Jersey solar market. My father lives in New Jersey, and I've become friends with Jim Spano, who's kind of an OG in the New Jersey market. That market is pretty much on fire, and I feel like it's, like it was here in 2017 in New Jersey now. Although they already have a large install base as well. They're a good 10 years ahead of us here in the Midwest. Let's reminisce a little bit about some of your work in Illinois, the IKEA projects. Can you talk to how those projects came about?
Yes, so the first set of IKEA projects were actually being developed and went into construction right when I started at SoCor in 2012. So we have a long history with that customer, and I think it's an interesting customer because they certainly don't have the same view of, projects that a typical U.S. company has. They have very aggressive goals. They're very committed to sustainability. So they've been a great market leader and really set the stage for the future projects that came about in a lot of these markets. So 2012, SoCore built projects for IKEA in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 2 stores in Chicago, and then 1 store in Canton, Michigan, which is just outside of Detroit. So those were, at the time, the biggest solar projects that were on rooftops in those states. So it was really exciting to work on those projects. And then 2 years ago, we successfully completed construction on the project at the Joliet Distribution Center. And once again, that project in Illinois became the largest rooftop project in Illinois. I've heard that it's since been surpassed by a larger project. Maybe you were a part of it and dethroned us, I'm not sure. But
yes, we were.
You were
Yeah.
added one extra panel than what we had on Joliet, probably, right? But yeah, so they've been a great customer, and they're just very committed to sustainability and renewable energy. So it's really great to have worked with them, and they're fantastic about allowing us to have tours at their sites for other potential customers that are just learning about solar, or to talk to other customers. So they're really a great industry leader. I'm really glad that they've built a lot of big projects in Illinois. It's been really great, I think, for the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I have to say, I have strong ties to Scandinavia, and as most people know, IKEA is a Swedish company, but and they're very dedicated to sustainability. Soup to nuts. They're really interested in making products that are truly sustainable, and of course, operating their stores with clean, green energy. Now, is Engie owning and operating all of the assets that you develop?
So I would say about maybe 70% of our projects are projects that we own and we finance. And then maybe 30% of the projects are projects that the customers will own. So it really just depends on the preference of the customer. Most customers are interested in a PPA or a lease, because that way they don't have to come out of pocket for the CapEx for a project. They don't have to look or try to compare the solar project's payback period and IRR with other energy projects that, are just not comparable by any means. So it's really been a great way for customers to embrace renewable energy as opposed to just a straight purchase option. But we do have a number of customers that are interested in purchasing. So in some markets, like in Illinois, the incentives were so fantastic that if the customer wanted to buy the system, that they would probably have a really great payback period or IRR to do so. Same with markets like New Jersey. The incentives are very lucrative. It makes a lot of financial sense to do a solar project. And then some states, we just can't do a PPA or a lease. The customer has to buy the system. So like in Florida right now, we're building some projects where the customer owns the system, because we're not allowed to do PPAs in Florida. And doing a leased transaction is very difficult based on some historical experiences there. So it's really market dependent and customer dependent.
Yeah, every market is different and has its nuances. You mentioned not being able to do PPAs. Indiana is a state where you currently cannot do PPAs.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a hindrance for many developers. And, we're doing a portfolio of Walmarts this year with another developer, and that developer was pursuing some opportunities in Indiana, but that came to a screeching halt once they figured that out. So, oh well, maybe someday.
Yes, exactly.
And the IKEA Joliet project was 2.9 megawatts DC, great project, and yes, the largest rooftop array for about a year. And then Maggot Glove snuck under the wire with 3.4 megawatts DC. They were able to put 2 projects under one roof, basically 2 different tax IDs. So that's how they're able to, transcend the 2 megawatt limit that we have here in Illinois. We have a 2 megawatt AC limit for behind the meter projects for anyone interested in that. So other than IKEA's and Target's, are there other projects in Illinois that you can talk about?
So we do have one project under construction right now with FedEx Ground in Illinois. So that one will be completed this year. But as far as our customer-sided projects, I'm really sad to say that that's all we had. So I mentioned that we were really proactive in this market with developing ahead of a final incentive and really, final structure on how this program was going to work. And those were the projects that were successful. I can tell you that we competed in a lot of RFPs. We won projects with other customers. And because we were about a year late to the dance, we just couldn't get them through interconnection. We couldn't get all of the, ducks in a row before we had to build the projects in order to meet the timeline with this program. So the key to success here was really the pre-planning and finding customers that were willing to partner on projects as opposed to run out a lengthy RFP process once all of the program details were finalized, because there was only a roughly 4-month window between when those details were finalized on this program and when the incentive was open and then closed. So it was really too tight of a timeline for a lot of these projects, because by the time a customer awarded business, we were just a couple weeks away from the program opening date and just couldn't get the interconnection together, or a host of other issues. So this program definitely awarded those who planned ahead.
Yeah, it is frustrating riding this solar coaster in Illinois. It's like the ramp up is very exciting, but then it's quickly over. So many projects come to fruition so quickly that then the incentives are dried up. That is the nature of the beast. And now we're in a waiting period. And it could be a few years before there's new RECs on the market. But as I say to my customers, if you don't get in that queue, if you don't do the early planning, and that means getting your interconnection agreement, getting your special use permit if you need a permit at all, and then applying into the program. It doesn't take a huge amount of resources. It's usually less than $20,000 to do that early planning and permitting, and then you're staged to go when the time comes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, because I think it's a really nice way to reward the projects that are set up for success, right? That are through all of those hurdles. If you don't have interconnection yet, then you probably shouldn't be securing an incentive, because you may not have a project. So it makes sense that you have to line everything up in advance. It's just a really tough timeline for a lot of customers to get approval, and they're not sure what they're approving. So they really have to find a great developer partner to walk them through that process. So it's interesting, but it definitely rewards those that are that are set up for success.
I'm curious though, if a large customer reaches out to you guys and wants to do solar in a place where third-party ownership isn't practical, and but they could do a behind-the-meter rooftop solar project, you will actually do that and then just sell it to the customer?
Yes, so we've done a number of build transfer projects or customer-owned projects in markets that are, I would say, not friendly to solar at all. So Kansas is a market where we built an IKEA store. IKEA owns the system, but that's not a very friendly DG solar market. Florida is another market where we're building projects right now that the customers own. So we see that a lot. There's a lot of interest in these markets for customers that have these sustainable or renewable energy goals. So we definitely have to work together to get through all these challenges, but we do see a lot of interest in those markets, and we've built a number of projects in those markets that I would say are not your typical rooftop or DG solar markets.
So let's talk a little more about the development process. It's of course known to those of us who are developing projects, but for If you're a, C&I facility owner, whether that's a single facility or a portfolio of facilities, it's, it's a learning process to understand what happens during a solar project development. But just addressing the Illinois market, for example, walk us through what are the stages of basic project development, and what are the critical thresholds in a project?
Yeah, I would say for Illinois in particular, what we like to do is show customers like a base case and then perhaps an enhanced case for a project. So just with all the uncertainty of what's happening with the next steps on this program and what the true value of these dollars or these incentives will be per kilowatt hour, it's really important for customers to understand and to make a decision to move forward based on a range of results. That way, we don't come back to them in 6 months after we've perhaps applied for interconnection or spent a lot of, significant development dollars. You mentioned like $20,000 perhaps on some projects you have to spend to really get it ready for the program, only to have them come back and say that they, can't pursue the project at that return threshold. So I would say that a critical step is, getting that interconnection application in with the utility, helping the customers understand the wide range of where the project economics could fall, and then also to walk them through the timeline, because that's the other big question mark here is, are we going to get incentives in 2020? Are we going to get incentives in 2021? When can I actually build this project? And if a customer has a really tight view on economics or timelines, this is going to be a really challenging market for them. So I would say that we just try to be as transparent as possible with, all these different, things that we might come across during the development cycle. And customers appreciate that. They don't want to go back to their leadership in, 2 years and say, hey, this, we didn't understand this risk, or we didn't know this could happen in this market. So I think that's really incumbent on the developers to walk them through and give them a real view of what could happen with the project.
Yeah, there's a lot of education involved, and we try to be as transparent as possible. We want to underpromise and overdeliver. We don't want customers to get any gotchas. While there are unknowns and things that we just can't know, there's a certain risk reward here, like any capital project. And if you go through the process, you can get a firm understanding of what the ROI is. And like you said, base case and best case, or worst case and best case. And we're doing a lot of that now with our customers as well, because of the uncertainties of Block 5. There will be a Block 5. Those monies are being collected by law. If you look at your power bill in Illinois, you will see a renewable portfolio standard fee on there. And there is legislation that is working its way through Springfield to double that fee, perhaps, right? To expand the RPS, to expand the program, and at the end of the day, make more renewable energy credits flow into the market. One renewable energy credit is 1 megawatt hour of electricity produced by a renewable energy facility. And so when RECs flow into the market, that means solar projects flow into the market at the end of the day. Well, we're nearing the end of our time together, Kristen, and hopefully this will be the first of many conversations we can have on SolarWorks for Illinois. I really appreciate you coming on. But what else would you like to tell our listeners about Engie? You guys are an incredible force. The numbers that you gave us in the intro, that 9 gigawatt goal, is mind-boggling. And then the 115 gigawatt installed base globally is double mind-boggling. So what else should we know about Engie?
Yeah, I would say that, the 115 gigawatts that I mentioned, the global, that a lot of that is fossil fuel that's either being retired or phased out. So we are really focused on building out our renewable platform globally, as well as in the U.S. But the U.S. is a really fantastic market, and we're seeing a ton of interest from corporates, and seems like a lot of pressure from stakeholders They want to see what what they're buying. They want to know that the company that they're buying or they're investing in has sustainability policies. So we're really excited about our C&I business, which is the business that I'm a part of. So focusing on these large corporates and helping them with their renewable energy goals, but then also looking down at the tier twos. We talked about Target and Walmart and, the big companies that are at the top of the leaderboard, but that's really just scratching the surface on what we're going to see in the US over the next 5 years. So I'm very confident. And I think COVID's really, if it's done anything good for us, it's shown us how one little challenge can really throw off our economy and throw everything into a tailspin. So if this is the result of COVID, what we're experiencing over the past couple of months here, just imagine, and I think we're all realizing, wow, if the sea levels rise or if the climate really changes, it's going to have a huge impact on us. We all need to do our part, and, companies, I think, are going to be taking a much, more active role, if they haven't already, in developing a strategy. So I'm really excited. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting projects, especially with the ITC stepping down. I think that's pushing a lot of customers. They're interested in trying to get some projects built out while the incentives are still lucrative and available. So we're really excited, and we think it's going to be a great market for a lot of the big C&I customers in the U.S. So we're excited.
Yeah, we have so much runway in the industry, and while certain markets will ebb and flow, the overall picture is just very rosy. We're installing 14 or 15 gigawatts of solar per year in the U.S. That could double to 30 plus gigawatts in very realistic scenarios that are now being painted like by the 2035 report out of Berkeley. And people should check that out. 2035report.org is the website for that. Well, thank you, Kristen Fornes, Director of Development for Engie Distributed Renewables in Chicago. I want to let our listeners know that they can find all of our material at cesnrg.com. That's our website. Please sign up for our email. Check us out on YouTube, Solar Works for Illinois, and give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and please tell your friends about Solar Works for Illinois. We want to get more people educated and knowledgeable about the solar opportunity, both here in the Midwest and nationally. Thank you, Kristen. Have a great day.